Now I know how comes people are so crazy about this and so hard to get one.
It is very difficult in the U.S. to buy these bottles.
Same as Taiwan.
Same as Taiwan.
嗨，各位观众大家好，我是交易吧吧主 Alex， 又见面了。那今天是我们非常难得有这个荣幸，请到 Buffalo Trace 的首席调酒师 Drew Mayville 来到我们交易吧，来跟我们做交流，顺便帮我们开这个久违非常难得一见的 Stagg。
Hello, everybody.
We know you have a tremendous experience in making whiskey in your career.
Yes.
That's more than 45 years.
Almost 45. Well, I'm the master blender for Sazerac, which includes Buffalo Trace Distillery. But my background starts back in 1980, working for Seagram. Eventually, I worked my way up to become the master blender for Seagram in North America. And then when Seagram was sold, I actually went with Diageo as the master blender. So I worked for two of the largest distilleries in the world, and then came to Buffalo Trace almost 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, we were not the largest in the world. But today, after winning so many awards and also buying other companies, we are one of the largest in the world now too. So my career has been with the largest distilleries in the world, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
And master blender for these three companies.
So as the master blender of the most award-winning and the largest capacity distillery in the world, you had a great position to see how things going on. So in your view, okay, what's the next 20 years gonna happen in American bourbon, American rye whiskey, and the global whiskey industry?
Well, I think we got to take a step back before you can look at the future. And when I was in the industry, starting in the 80s, bourbon was going downhill. So there was a resurgence of vodka and other categories, but certainly it wasn't whiskey or bourbon. And then since I've been at Buffalo Trace, we saw it change dramatically. So bourbon and whiskey market has gone up, and we see no end in sight right now. I suspect there will be some stabilization, but for us, I'm speaking from a Sazerac perspective or Buffalo Trace, we only see the upside because we are not represented globally yet, and we have a lot of opportunities to do that. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm sitting here with you talking, is that we feel we've got tremendous opportunities for the future. So I think for us as a company, the whiskey market, the bourbon market for us is nothing but expansion for the future. And that's why we've invested over $1 billion increasing our capacity.
Yeah, so sounds very promising,
yes.
But in the same time, it does not sound like the price will have any chance to go softer anytime soon, right?
The price. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But you know, nobody can predict with 100% certainty what the market will bear, right?
Yes.
Who knows? Maybe it'll be rum the next big spirit type. Or right now in the United States, it's tequila that's booming.
Yes.
So it kind of goes in cycles, but right now, for us as a company at Sazerac, we have tremendous opportunity globally because we're not well represented yet all over the world.
Well, you're talking about one key point here is as one of the big conglomerate of Sazerac. So you have all the footprints on all different kinds of spirits.
Correct.
Right, so you won't miss any opportunities.
We won't miss.
Yeah.
We'll be represented in all the major categories.
So as the master blender, are you only focused on whiskey, or you also have to take care of the tequila and something else?
Well, I do get involved with all aspects of Sazerac, but as we get bigger in each category, we hire the right people to take over because I can't do everything.
Got it.
For example, I was involved heavily with not only the cognac operation, but also our Irish whiskeys. And so since we bought these companies and we start expansion, I can't do that. And so we hire people. We hired a cellar master for the cognac region in our cognac plant, and then also a master blender for the Irish whiskey. So as we grow, we hire people appropriately to fill the need and the expansion because I can't do everything.
Yeah,
and I'm not an expert at every product category. I do know some things about each because Seagram gave me that experience back in at the Seagram time.
Yeah, sounds just perfect. So back to whiskey a little bit.
Sure.
Because in Taiwan market, most of the, well, you can say fans, they still know a little bit more familiar with the Scotch whiskey.
Yes.
So if you have to just tell the difference between Scotch and American, what would you say?
I would just say that they're different spirit types depending on the grains that they use. For instance, bourbon uses a majority of corn, which gives it that sweeter, more fruity taste profile. Whereas a Scotch, because of, if it's peated especially, you have a very distinctive peated flavor, that smokiness. So they're totally different. But also the method of distillation and fermentation, all the process variables make the differences. The other thing, the main point is that bourbon and straight rye whiskeys from America are aged in new barrels, which gives you totally different taste profile because you're really extracting a lot of the congeners from that barrel. Whereas when you're using a used barrel like Scotch, it's less impactful in the taste profile. So bourbon and straight rye whiskeys from America are totally different in taste profile. And I would say they tend to be on the fruitier, sweeter side, and that's mainly because of the grain corn that's used. But both have their place. Scotch has been around and around the world a lot longer. Bourbon is new to the rest of the world. So we're here to educate people about bourbon, how it tastes, and the benefits of bourbon, because bourbon is very palatable for the average person. We have different styles. We have, like I said, a rye bourbon, which is spicy because of the rye, that pepperiness. Then we have wheated bourbon, which is softer for the palate. And then we have our straight rye whiskeys, which are really peppery, spicy. So we have different styles, and we really believe that will make will give people that diversity to taste different types of products from America.
Yeah, talking about diversity, I think Buffalo Trace is the best sample here, right? You got so many diversified portfolio.
Right.
Just looking at your masterpiece here.
Right.
Can you share with us which one is your favorite?
They're all my favorites. Of course, you can't pick a favorite child, can you? But I always tell people that it's the one we haven't made is my favorite because we're always exploring on how to make better products.
In my humble view, sometimes in different occasion or different circumstance, you might want to try different bourbon, different whiskey. So for example, within this portfolio, if we want to have a casual meal, like American barbecue,
right?
Which one you will recommend?
Well, I think whiskeys go with barbecue. I mean, I don't care which one of these you pick, they'll accentuate and contrast depending on what you're eating. So really, you can't go wrong with bourbon. I think bourbon and meat especially are suited for one another. And just to give you an example, like a straight rye whiskey, like Thomas Handy or the Sazerac, really cuts through some of the fattiness of of a barbecue. So you actually will enhance the flavor basically, and cut through some of that fattiness. Whereas some of the sweeter ones like William LaRue Weller or something that's wheated will enhance that sweetness of the meat. So depending on what you're eating and what mood you're in, you can actually contrast the food or enhance the food flavor. So depending on what you want.
So if I have a quick conclusion that if that's a family gathering, house style barbecue, Sazerac is something you won't go wrong.
You won't go wrong.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But you won't go wrong with the others.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Would you elaborate a little bit about Stagg with us? I think that's definitely one of the masterpieces you guys done.
Yes, it's we target around 8 or 9 years, and it's not age claim, but to get that taste profile, it takes that long of aging in a new barrel in the heat in Kentucky. It's not as hot as here, but it's warm in Kentucky in the summertime. And then at night it cools, so you've got that interaction with the wood in and out, so you're really maturing, and you can tell by the color, it's really aged well. That's the influence of the barrel. So there's no colorings added to this.
Yeah, you make a great point. Actually, this kind of color is not something just like 8-9 years, right? So I think the environment of Kentucky and also probably the recipe of this really
makes a difference.
Yes.
But there's another factor is that in the winter, our warehouses are kept to around 45 degrees. So it's never dormant, the whiskey. So it's always aging, even if it's small amount, it's always aging. And so it makes a difference. And then this recipe being put in the barrel at 125 proof. And in America, because of the temperature, the environment, the actual proof or the ABV goes up over time. So this one here goes in maximum of 125 proof. And then when it comes out, it can come out at, if you look at that one, it's 138.2.
Yes.
So you see how the water has evaporated and you really have a concentration of the alcohol.
Wow.
So that's quite a bit different than some whiskeys around the world.
So have you do the experiment that if I keep in the storage like 20, 30 years, what it would become?
If you keep it that long and it's warm, you won't have anything left in the barrel. It'll evaporate most of it. So what you have to do is manage that maturation by keeping it in a cooler area of the distillery. And then you can age it longer, but it's hard for us to age anything longer than say 20 to 25 years. So we are experimenting with ways of extending that maturation.
Yes. Well, there's one idea talking about in US because distillery use the whole new barrel. So if you put too long, the woody, the flavor will be over oak.
Right.
Did you see the sweet spot of the aging? Some people say like 12, 15 years.
Well,
would you agree?
No, I would say when I started at Buffalo Trace, most people thought that the best age for bourbon was 6 years, 6, 7 years, maybe 8. And then we started in 2000 releasing some of these, and these were about 17 years old. So we actually helped change that mentality and that thinking.
How you do that?
Well, we introduced them and people liked the flavor. And that's how it changed. Nobody was interested in old products back 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, how you balance the woody?
By location. So if you put it in a location where it ages more gracefully, like a cooler, lower part of the warehouse, you can extend it. And that's why it tastes good the way it tastes. And we do win a lot of awards for products that are quite old. The thing is, there's a limit with bourbon and straight rye, is that if you get too old, it can become very bitter and over oaked.
Yes.
But we're learning how to get around that. There's different techniques that we have learned through our experimental program.
There will be another topic for us.
Another topic.
I mean, because the puppy 25 years now is the oldest, right?
Yeah, we did one release of 25-year-old. But we also have a product called OFC that's 25.
So you think probably that's the upper limit.
You're getting close, unless you do something else, which we are doing.
I see. Okay. Wow.
But the Scotch industry has propelled that myth that it has to be old to taste good. We dispel that. We believe it can be still young and still be a great whiskey. But if it is old, we want to manage it so it does taste good. And when you use a new barrel, it's a challenge because the oak flavor you're extracting is the strongest. So each subsequent use of the barrel is a lot milder impact on liquid.
I got it.
You got it.
You make a great point that if any audience disagree with Drew saying older doesn't mean better, come on to the exchange bar, let's try it.
Yes.
So that's the folks start to do the opening.
Well, this one is uncut, unfiltered, so straight from the barrel. And what that means is nothing's filtered. So this is the way the whiskey comes out of the barrel. This is not just one barrel, but it's a blend of several barrels in this. Even though it's small amounts, it's still a blend. So that's why each proof is a little bit different and it tastes a little bit different than the previous batches. The recipe is at least 51% corn. And everybody's gonna say, well, what is the exact percent? But we don't divulge that. The second grain is rye, and the third grain is barley malt. So majority by law has to be corn for a rye bourbon.
That's quite different between American and the Scotch, right? Because the Scotch, there's no such kind of thing called recipe. And in US, do you think if you announce the recipe, anyone could duplicate? I doubt that.
I don't think anybody could ever duplicate it exactly, even though they use the same recipe.
Yes.
But as a company, we have decided not to release the recipe.
Okay.
And so we do vary some of our products based on recipe. Actually, the rye bourbon, we have 2 recipes at Buffalo Trace, 2 core recipes. One is higher rye versus the other one. And some of the examples of the higher rye are Blanton's and Elmer T. Lee. So we do have differences in taste based on the recipe for those brands. And then we do have other recipes that we're doing. And we're also experimenting, obviously, with lots of different recipes. Because that's one of our variables we look at when we experiment with is the recipe. But we also look at the process, we look at the barrels, we look at where it's aged, we look at the trees, we look at every variable, even the strain of the grains, which we just released the Daniel Weller, which is a different grain of wheat, and it's quite different and unique.
Okay, hopefully we can try that out soon. Wow.
Next time you invite me here.
You got it, you already been invited. Wow.
So this is a powerful whiskey because of the proof, 65.5 ABV. So it's quite powerful. So I always recommend to people to only put a little when you're tasting on your palate. And also, once you do taste it that way straight, you can add a drop or 2 of water, might open it up a little bit. But initially, I'd like people to taste it straight like that. And remember, the first sip is explosive because the alcohol, your palate needs to adjust for a few minutes. And then you take another sip, the second sip, you start seeing some of the flavors. But on the nose, it's pretty powerful.
It's
fully
delicious. Agree. Yeah, the
really
smell.
Rich and bold.
I would say like a little bit like the old-fashioned American apple pie.
There you go.
Yes.
I would say you do get the fruits, maybe even apple or apricot. You would probably get some of that. Lots of people do get that sweetness, the fruitiness. But you also get some spiciness from the rye.
Yes.
But you do get vanilla, caramel, butterscotch notes, and that's because of the new barrel.
But the spicy will not be that obvious compared with the high percentage of the alcohol, right? It's actually pretty smooth in terms of that kind of...
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
And remember when you taste, just a little bit, because what it is like fireworks on your palate. So you enhance the flavors and they explode on your palate.
Well, just the smell, I could already smell this for 1 hour straight.
I know.
That's so beautiful. Wow.
It's powerful. It just explodes the flavor on your palate.
Yes.
As blenders, we like to watch the transition of the flavor across the palate. So there's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end, just like a story.
Yeah.
So let's try it again after our palates have adjusted to the alcohol. And you watch how it transitions that fruitiness, then to the spiciness towards the front of your tongue, and then the dry oak flavors towards the back of your palate.
But I have to say, not fooled by this 62% something, it's pretty smooth.
I hear that all the time, everywhere I go when we taste it.
Because everybody assumes it should be hot, but not as hot as you think.
It's actually quite smooth.
Yes.
But what you get is that explosion of flavor. It's not the alcohol per se, it's the flavor really amplified because of the higher proof.
And how come the sweetness could be that clear and vivid? You know, it's just like his kind of a persona.
Yes.
Okay, it's a cowboy standing right in front of you. It's very clear character.
Yes, it's distinctive.
Yeah.
And it's delicious. So if you try it again now, you'll see that flavor. And you see how it goes off. It's sweet to start, and you get those baking spices and pepperiness on the front. And then it lingers now towards the back with the oak flavor and the dryness.
Yes.
And you see how that transitions beautifully and balanced.
And lasts so long.
And it lingers for a long time.
Yes.
And that's because nothing's filtered. None of those fatty acids and esters are taken out during the filtration process. So now it lingers, it stays, you can taste it minutes later. So it'll last a long time, the whole bottle then.
Yeah.
If we put the cork back in. There you go. It won't evaporate. And again, like I said, the more you sip on it, the more I think you can enjoy it because you start to see some of the other flavors that you didn't initially.
Yes. Wow, I'm so envy your job. You can do this all day long.
It's not a job.
Oh, yeah, your career, your passion.
No, it's nothing but fun.
Oh.
I haven't worked a day in my life.
That's the perfect thing you can say about what you do every single day.
Yeah, this you can't get much better than this.
Yes.
It's tough. You got to make decisions all the time on this product.
Yeah.
These products.
Now I know how comes people are so crazy about this and so hard to get one.
It is very difficult in the US to buy these bottles.
Same as Taiwan.
The same as Taiwan. And this is even more difficult.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why we actually developed the Stagg is because we have George T. Stagg, which is aged over 15 years. But this is once a year. So we decided to give people some straight from the barrel at least a couple times a year with this. So you get that flavor, that quality of product with something at least a few other times, besides just waiting for that. So that's one of the reasons we developed that, is to have that available. So this is a lot less in terms of age, but beautiful whiskey.
Yeah, you know, just after 2 sips,
Yep.
I think I'm enjoy a festival of dessert, pie, spice, herb.
Yes, it's all there.
The good stuff there.
And you even get like a dark chocolate.
Chamomile,
Yes.
and a little bit tobacco,
You do get-
leather.
You do get those because of the higher proof, and you're aging at 8 years to 10 years for this product. So that complexity increases, and then as you move up to this one, the George T. Stagg, even more of that flavor, those leather notes come through. It's really quite unique. As you increase age, the complexity also increases.
Yes. And I know this is the batch 18. So if you compare with this batch with others, what will you say?
Well, it's going to be all different, just like these. The antique are different every year. Each year is vintage, just like this. Each lot is different. It's vintage. So depending on where we source the barrels and which warehouses and which level or which floors, they'll all be different every time we make a batch. So you'll see people compare last year's, the year before, and they say they like this one. But it's basically, to me, personal preference. Because some people prefer maybe more spice, more of that pepperiness. Some people like more balanced, and some people maybe like a little sweeter. So it depends on your personality and what you like to drink with it.
Wow, fantastic. You've done an amazing job.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And it's just not me, it's the whole distillery. It's the distiller, it's the blender, it's the people putting it in the bottles, it's the label. Everybody does it. It's just not one individual.
I think about one question.
Okay.
If any young or maybe teenager or just early 20, he want to follow you. He want to be another master blender. What will you say to them?
It'll be challenging to do it because people like me stay around forever. And so there's not many jobs available sometimes. But we see it now in the industry. So a lot of people are getting into development, product development. And even the people that we hire are product developers. So people who know how to mix and blend things. And then you learn the whiskey part of it. And over time, you could become a blender. So we find a lot of women getting into the industry now and becoming master blenders, even our master blender for our Irish whiskey. Because women tend to be a little more sensitive on taste and smell. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. We see an insurgence of that. But also, like I said, if people like me would retire, it would make room for some younger people. But you do need a lot of experience. And the way I learned through many years is having a mentor. So my mentor was one of the best in the industry. And that's who I learned from. So you need to have that transition and learning through a mentor.
Okay. So please, no matter whether you retire or not, I highly recommend you set up an academy or training school to pass on your knowledge to the new generation.
But what we do that, you know, all the developers that we have at Sazerac are there when I'm there. So there's a whole group of people learning now. So it's just a matter of time. And once they, maybe I'll never retire, who knows?
Yeah, please. Yeah. That's too greedy from us, but yeah, that's a masterpiece. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.